Hi, this is Laura from Healing with Spirit. We are here to do the 2022 psychic energy forecast. There's a lot happening. It's taken me a while between getting sick, and it's just really just to be able to get on the video and just actually record it is kind of been the challenge. For those of you who have been with me on Facebook Lives, I have been hinting to some of the things that we are going to be experiencing this year. Let's just look at the numbers for the year 2022. So when we look at from a numerology standpoint, we are looking at 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 2 equals 6. So let's just look at the three twos, the fact that we got a 2-2-2 year, okay? What I kept hearing was one, we need to take a forward action in order to get the positive results. If we keep spinning, doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting different results, it's kind of like the definition of insanity, right? So there is no bypassing this year, bypassing the stuff that we want to avoid. So if I look at like one of the twos, right? So when I think of two, I think of collaboration, relationships, partnerships. I think of like community versus self. So this is going to be, yes, we have to do a lot of self work this year, but it's really about community. When I look at it, number two, okay, I think of human needs versus spiritual needs and learning how to balance that out. How can you make what your spiritual self, your soul self is asking for and balance it out into the real world needs like food, clothing, shelter, all that kind of thing. Then I look at the third two and I kept hearing it's the balance. What I kept hearing for that word was balance. Balance between yin and yang, light and dark, ego and soul, masculine and feminine. So it's that duality, balance and duality. And then when you add them all up, it equals 6. So that comes very similar. If you anybody who's familiar with tarot, that's the Lover's card in tarot. So what I kept hearing over and over and over again the last few weeks is this is an integration year. This is a duality year, but it's also a relational year with self and with community. Okay. Not necessarily like, how is it with my kids, my partner, my work associate? It's community and really defining what community looks like for you. And also defining what that relationship is with yourself, with your soul, with your spirit, with your inner child, all of that. This is a big relational year. There's going to be a lot happening this year. And I call it 3 tiers. All right. So for the past 2 years, what has been the focus? The focus has been a lot on fear and lack of safety, lack of fear, lack of, am I going to die? All these things, right? Lack of security. And now what the focus needs to be is on what do you want versus don't want. Okay. There's been a lot in the past year focusing and fighting and being resistant to what we don't want. I don't want this. I don't want that. And now it's a year of, well, we need to be calling in more of what do we do want, and not from an egoic. Be very mindful of this. This is very important. Be very mindful. This isn't coming from an egoic, material way. Well, I want my job. I want a house. I want to have $100,000. I don't want to be losing, that is not what we're talking. When we talk about the energies, we're talking about what do you do want? Do you want security? Do you want freedom? Do you want bodily autonomy, right? These are themes that are going to be popping up this year, okay? Because the energies are amplified. When we see like a 222 or any kind of like things like that, like double, like here 1111, 22, and 33, right? Those are master numbers. And the energies are going to be amplified in 3 different ways. I call it 3 tiers this year. So I asked a question earlier, like, what kind of things do you see? And some people are like, I just want more love and connection this year and blah, 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 blah. Well, for folks that have been on this journey, and on this spiritual path and doing the hard, not, there's a difference between saying you're doing the work, love and light, everything is so love and light. That is not what I'm talking about. I am talking about digging into your shadows, doing the hard work, healing yourself, healing your trauma, healing your triggers, addressing the generational trauma, addressing the karmic debt that maybe you have, doing some of these really hard shadow worky stuff. That is what we have supposed to have been doing for the last few years, okay? So if you've been doing that work, you might be finding maybe a breath of fresh air this year, okay? Because things might be leveling up for you, all right? The second tier are folks that are maybe just awakening. Maybe the pandemic kind of triggered something within for them to reevaluate themselves, reevaluate priorities, reevaluate what's important in their life and what's not. Okay. Those folks might have some, I'm having a good day today. Tomorrow I'm not having a good day, and why do I feel this way? And tomorrow I feel very happy. Right. So it's like, it's going to be a lot of this, like anytime we start anything new, right? The waters are very turbulent. Right when we throw a boulder into the water, right? It creates a lot of turbulence and a lot of extremes, right? But the more it settles into its rhythm, it evens out, right? So that's what we're talking about. The third tier are folks that are doing everything they can to avoid the changes that need to happen in their lives. They want to cling on to what was. They want to cling everything to go back the way it was. Okay. Those folks might find it very difficult this year because of the resistance to change. We started, I was in a group partially running for an addictions group this week, and we talked about the resistance to change. We can't get sober, right? We can't wake up and get sober if we are resisting the changes that we need to make in our lives. That is what this is calling us onto. All right. So the cards I pulled 10 cards. And so a lot of the cards are also talking about that. The cards here in the present are these two. So one, it's kind of showing that, yes, you know what? We have so much stuff coming at us. We don't know if we're coming, if we're going. We don't know if we're going to have a job or not have a job, layoff or not layoff. The inflation's killing us. We don't know if we're going to pay our bills. All the things. Am I going to be sick? Am I going to be healthy? All those things. Everything's coming at us. But what we're not seeing is the opportunity with the door open behind us. That we don't necessarily, it's not about escaping, but it's understanding that it's always darkest before dawn, that the dawn will always come, the light will always show us the way. When we are in the thick of the darkness, the stars shine the brightest, and that opportunities are here presenting themselves if we are willing to open ourselves to a different perception and a different way of thinking. Okay, this is where we say, be open to the changes, be open to the new ways of thinking. Okay, and this card right with it is kind of addressing that left brain, right brain, intuitive self, egoic mind. And if you notice, she doesn't have any harness with the two sphinxes in the bottom. It's all about using and trusting the intuition as the guidance system to know how to make the decisions moving forward. Okay. Now, also in the present, which are influence cards, this year might be a big change year for some of you. Okay. And what I mean by that is you're going to have to make some choices. And some of these choices may not be very easy. All right. For some, it might be, because maybe you have been waiting, and maybe you've been waiting saying, I've been looking for a sign to make this change and make this leap, and now I have it and I'm off running. Others of you, you've been resisting. It's hard to make those changes. And now, as you can see, my light is flickering. And maybe that's a sign for me about me being resistant to change. So this is a sign that you're going to be, it's like two roads diverged in a wood. You need to know, take a pause, stop, pause, assess, process, and then make a decision. Okay. This is also showing, in this case, because it was inverted, is saying that the things that you might have thought aren't, everything isn't as hunky-dory. So if you are bypassing, and if you're trying to put a mask on, and if you're trying to pretend things are better than they are, this is really a call to get real with yourself and to address some of the issues that might be happening. This is not a time, this is also inverted. This is, see, did you see that? See that flicker? This is also a time, we got some spirits in the house. This is not a time to be going out and playing and, self-medicating and just pretending into fantasy world as if you don't have to do this work. This work is being really called upon us, and I'll show you later after I finish these cards, show you why that is, because I pulled other cards from other decks to kind of show you how that all lines up. Hoarding isn't the answer either. So this is talking about hoarding thoughts, hoarding behaviors, hoarding belief systems, hoarding onto the old ways, the old past, all that stuff that no longer serves you. Okay, all that stuff is in the past, and you're trying really hard to bring it into the present, and doesn't work anymore. It just doesn't work. Okay, and it's also affecting your ability to tap into the higher power that you are being asked to tap into. Okay, and these other two cards are basically talking about harnessing. And what I kept hearing when I pulled these two cards was, this is time to get emotionally mature. This is the time to deal with the triggers, okay? Because people are triggered out the ass right now, okay? Let's just get real. But this is a time to address the triggers, to get emotionally mature, to do that work so that the triggers don't control us. We can turn the triggers actually into a power, okay? The sun is also, by the way, still waking up. We just had a major geomagnetic storm last weekend. So if you felt yourself triggered, tired, or maybe you have autoimmune disease and you had a relapse or an uptick in some of the symptoms that you're having, or if you've got PTSD or cardiac issues, you might have noticed an uptick in that. Now the sun is still waking up. It entered a new solar cycle last year, I'm losing track of years. And what does that mean? That means that every time it opens up a new coronal hole with some solar wind, you're going to get some storms, which means what? It means more earthquakes, more volcanic activity, which also means any triggers that you can't handle now, if you haven't gotten a grip on them, they might get worse as the year goes on if you don't start dealing with the triggers now, because your triggers are going to become amplified. So it's hugely important to work on the triggers and work on the emotional maturity scale, okay? Because if you're avoiding dealing with trauma and your triggers and all those root systems, especially if you're like in recovery or those things, it's not going to serve you. You're fighting an uphill battle. It's time to really sit and, again, stop, pause, assess, process. And when you process, then you know what action to take. Okay. So this year is really focused in the areas, a lot of duality, integration, community, and relational. That is what the energies seem to be really talking to me about. So the way of living must change. This is evolution. We must adapt. We must address the triggers, heal the root issues, and stop making excuses as to why other things are more important than reclaiming our own power, especially women. I mean, there's a lot of feminine cards here. Those who identify as female. This is time for you to wake up, rise up, and learn how to harness and use your voice. We have been silenced for far too long. We did a podcast last week, which will come out in February, where my guest on triggers and spiritual medicine, and my guest was coming in. We were talking about how the burning times of witches influence white women culture today. And I found it fascinating because when we deal with things like breast cancer or other health crises, or we talk about trauma, it all goes to the roots of some of the things that might have even been embedded before we were born in our own DNA codes. This is the level of stuff we are leveling up. We don't have to carry 600 years of persecution in our DNA anymore. This is time for women to speak up. This is time for women to rise up. This is time for women to start honing and learning how to use their voices without getting triggered and without reacting in a detrimental way. Okay, so what are the supportive, because this is also saying if you do this work, the cards are saying that, guess what? You're going to be supported. There's going to be some celebrations here. There's going to be a lot of yays, okay? But it's all how we look at it. It's all perception. So what do we look at? What are the energies supportive for as we move forward in 2022? They're supportive for definitely, as I mentioned before, doing that deep trauma healing, whether for self, for generational trauma, karmic, past life, all of that. We've been doing some of this work at an increasing rate in the past couple of years, but this is like a climax. We're at that climax page, okay? This is also a good year. And I want to talk to people who already do this. See, there goes my light again. But we're talking about planting gardens. What seeds are you planting that is going to be sustainable and renewable? That goes from everything when you go to the grocery store. Are you buying a lot of prepackaged and a lot of packaged materials? Are you buying your stuff at Amazon with, again, a lot of packaging? Okay, so this is a time to really look at what seeds are you planting and what gardens. And on top of the gardens, if you've been questioning or feeling, now I swear to God, this is insane. This light is going on and off. This is a time to also plant and grow your own food. Last year, I grew beets for the first time in a planter on my deck because I don't have a yard. So if you say I live in an apartment, I can't do it, no excuse, because you can do container plants on your deck, okay? Learn a spiritual practice. This is a good year to, if not learn it, to really deepen it, deepen your connection to spirit, to soul, especially to the ancestors. The ancestors are really asking for us to step up, to listen, and to build a relationship so they can show us how to move forward in a sustainable way. This is also a good year and supportive for addressing and building sustainable relationships with yourself, with your shadow, integrating that shadow and light part of the self, okay? This is a good year also to clear out the clutter, to minimize. This is a minimize. Can go think more nature, less product, less consumerism, more nature. More spirit, more nature, less consumerism, less buying, less commercialism, all that, okay? And some of you may be like, don't say that. Well, this is what the energies are saying. We have become a throwaway society, and the trash, everything that's coming in and polluting the earth, it's just, the earth is gonna have her say if we don't watch it. And then it's a good year to really focus on building community. What does that look like? How does that? How do I even know what community is? You know, I mean, we think we know, but do we really know? And do we even know what love is? You know, and I would encourage you to maybe write something, write a letter to yourself, or write something in a paper. I've had clients do this and define, what does love mean? Challenge yourself. You may think you know, but when you put pen to paper, you might surprise yourself that you may not know as much as you think you know when it comes to simple things like, oh, I know what love is. Well, then explain it to me. Put it on paper, right? Put it on paper what community looks like. And then it's really going to show you how much you really think you know, okay? So the supporting cards that I pulled, these two kind of came out together and they kind of have a similar message. Surrender to your soul's path and surrender to the magic of who you are. Okay. That really goes into the theme of this is about restoring balance, restoring wholeness. We have this for a reason. This connects us to from our spiritual body and our mental body. And this connects the two bodies together. So that way we can become whole. All right. We also pulled the Lion card. The Lion card, I see again, if you're struggling with, like addiction or trauma and those loops that are really in the triggers, this is the time where your courage has to be stronger than your fears. If you know that you are divinely supported, this is the time to step up and walk the path. It takes courage to do that. And with the lions, remember, they are all together. It's all about that feminine community. The women, they hunt together, they rear their babies together, they feed together, and they are a very strong, tight-knit community, okay? And we are in election year, and I will do that probably in the summertime, do an election forecast. But what I kept hearing is this is the time for anybody who wants to run for office that considers themselves feminine or female. This is the year for them to rise up and have their voice in a political spectrum. Okay. And I will just leave it with that. And yeah, I mean, be gentle with yourself. This is going to be, for some, you might have breakthroughs because you've been doing this work a very long time and you just been waiting because it's been exhausting and you're just waiting for that breakthrough. This might be the year for you. Remember, there's 3 tiers. Those that have just discovered this might find a roller coaster of a year. For those of you who are still in denial or say that this is quackadoodles, might find that the resistance might be smacking them in the face. All right. And don't ignore the solar events that are going to be happening this year. Work with them, work with the energies, don't work against them, because the universe and the ancestors and your spirit guides, all of them are all here to guide you and to support you. It's a matter of us quieting this and opening up for us to receive. Okay. And Alyssa, if you would like, do you have any questions regarding the energies for this year that you would like answered before we kind of end today's broadcast? You got to unmute.
Am I the only person on right now?
I think so, but it's Mercury retrograde. This is what happens, right? So it's all good.
Yeah, I just didn't know if we were even showing our faces. I've just been listening.
Okay.
But no, that was all very interesting. I think we've kind of been on a similar path about, we were 5 and now this year it's 6. I feel like I've done so much work that this is going to be like a good year. But yeah, I guess we have to wait and see.
I know in talking to a lot of my astrologer friends, energetically right now is really tough for many. And that energy might carry through into February, if not March. And then it might be April and May when we finally feel like that rubber band snapped. So, I think collectively, I'm feeling there's going to be some waves. And I feel like there's going to be, I don't know, part of me is hesitant to even say this, but I think for political reasons, COVID just might disappear, because it's election year. And if that happens, I feel like it's going to happen in July. But I do feel something coming in September. I'm just not sure what. This is why, sometimes we do these, and then it gives us a general overlook of what happens. And then, right now, I heard take a partial sabbatical, sit back, reassess. Like Mercury retrograde right now over the next 3 weeks is a perfect time to pull back. This is not a time to be launching anything. This is not a time to go do things. This is a time to actually pull back, organize, declutter, reevaluate, redo, rethink, plan, you know. But this isn't the time, like if you're thinking about buying a car, buying a house, getting married, especially with all the other turbulent issues going on. But, so I think that's just going to muddy the issues for some. I'm glad I listened, and because like when I looked at my week this week, I was like, damn, I thought I wasn't really being productive, but look at what just went pop, 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 like in just 5 days. And it just, so as long as we keep putting the effort in and what we're trying to focus on, we're going to have these rubber band snaps. But this is really going to be a huge year testing the faith, even more so than last year. Because remember what happens. Think of a story, right? The story, you get all these things and it rises and rises. And really towards the end, like the last chapter, right? You get this big climax and all of a sudden, boom, 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 right? So we're kind of at that phase. I feel like we're going to have an element of that this year, where for some, it might feel more intense. But I do feel that's not going to be for everybody. So I would encourage you, I don't do astrology. I would encourage you, that might be something to maybe check your astrology chart to see where you're at, to see if, or just tap in, quiet the mind. We can get a lot of answers if we just sit and we just open our minds and just receive, especially if we are in the elements where we cause. Sometimes we say the ancestors are our own ancestors from our DNA, but the ancestors are also the rocks, the grass, the trees, the clouds, the water, the ocean, because those have evolved for millions of years. There's such deep innate wisdom in tapping into that. And that wisdom is speaking so loudly. It's whether or not we're listening, and how much of it are we listening? So I would say, like, as long as like you're doing and you're doing what you can do, from a proactive standpoint, and the rest of it's just waiting for, it's like, we can't control the flood. We can't control when the mountain decides to melt the snow caps and we get this massive catastrophic flood. All we can do is say, okay, how do I bring out my kayak, or how do I bring up my rowboat and learn how to steer in these waves, right? So it's more about learning how to harness the energies that aren't in your control and partner with them, not against them. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I have to respond and say, yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. So, I'll probably do another quick, because I've been doing up to like the last several presidential elections and so far they've been right. But I'm feeling I'll probably do another one for what's going to happen, because I already have some feelings, but I just don't feel comfortable sharing what they are right now. But I think there's going to be some challenges with the election. And so this is why it's important to think integrity, ethics, and voice, and make sure that the voice, like one of the things I was saying, I think I put on Twitter all over, and it was, if you're going to talk that, how about why isn't you as a congressperson have not addressed why Congress hasn't repealed, for instance, the legal protections and legal immunity indemnifying big pharma from vaccine injury? Because if you repealed that, you'd probably get a lot more people willing to vaccinate, if that's your agenda, right? But, if people are harmed, what recourse do they have? Nothing. So I think there's going to be things like that are going to end up spiking on the political spectrum, probably towards the end of the summer. So I think we're going to have these waves, but they're going to be different pieces. And it's a matter of how do we stay, as I heard several years ago from Spirit when I did a ceremony, it was, you're going to see all this, don't get off your path. So don't be like, well, that person's doing this, that person's doing that. No, it's about how are you showing up to it? Because if it's triggering you, then that's on you. That's something you have to work on. What is it that's really triggering you? Because it probably has nothing to do with that, because that was just the trigger. What's the real issue? So those are the things that I think are going to need to be addressed when we do this work. So I would highly recommend, this is going to be a good year for those that have got trauma-informed acupuncture, trauma-informed, and COVID literate too, because people are still having challenges. COVID literate acupuncturists and healers and spiritual mentors and guides on both ends, because that's going to help you stay on your path. Okay, make sense? Yes. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. And I will see you soon. Have a good day, everybody.